Welcome back, everyone. It's good to be with you today. Today, we're doing the relational part two, the relational realm part two of the series about where do we go now? And it's really interesting. Today's going to be all about managing our anxiety, especially in relationships. What's really interesting, and we're probably all experiencing a lot of this, talking into cameras for a lot of people and seeing themselves on camera causes anxiety. But there's a whole lot of other ways that we're getting triggered and anxieties coming up during our lives right now during this pandemic. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Wanda, and she's going to share a little bit about how we manage that anxiety from a relational standpoint and what's going on, particularly in our brains when all of that's happening. So Wanda, the ball is in your court now.
Okay, one of the things that I'm hearing from a lot of people and experiencing in my life is that being cooped up together and having scary things happening out there, anxiety leads to arguments. And I am telling my friends and neighbors and kids that Doug and I aren't arguing very much more than normal. Just a little more than normal, because we argue all the time. I mean, we argue during normal circumstances as well. But one of the things I wanted to share with you is kind of something that happens in our brain when we feel totally disconnected from a person that we've normally loved. And I have a good friend, a psychiatrist named Carl Lehman, and he's done a lot of research about this. And he says in the front of our brain, which is the prefrontal cortex area, which is also called your executive control area. It's where when you get grown up past 25 and you can make good decisions. There's a part, he calls them your relational circuits. And when the relational circuits are on, we're nice people. We feel connected to the people we're talking to. We're interested in what they have to say. We experience them as another real person that we have a heart for. We have compassion for what they think and feel. So a kind of real heart toward them comes out.
Yeah.
But when we get scared or angry or feel overwhelmed by what's going on in that conversation or by what happened before you even started that conversation, we see them as the problem. What do you mean that you said that? And how could you possibly think that? And I don't really even care what you think about that. And I don't even care that I don't care that what you think about that. And you're kind of going, those moments were like, why did I marry you? Or what was I thinking when I had kids? So I don't want to be connected to you. I don't even really want to do anything to fix this problem. So there is a part of your brain that it's more like it shuts down slowly. It doesn't usually go on and off, but it's actually something that God created us to do, to have that shut down. It's part of our fight, flight, or freeze system. So like you're walking through the woods and you see a bear, you don't want to go, oh, well, is that a good bear? Or can I run faster than that bear? Or, you know, what should I do here? You want to go, and run. So we're shutting down all that is a survival mechanism, but it doesn't work in relationships with the people we love. Okay. So if we can learn that this is happening, the first thing is if you can begin to recognize it at the beginning, as you're starting to shut down, you have a much better chance of not going all the way to the end to jump off a diving board and say, go away, I don't want to see you anymore. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is to try to begin to talk with the people that you might get into this situation with and say, you know, when we start to escalate, we're probably doing that brain thing. So how can we take a time out? That would be really helpful. But so what are you going to do when you take a time out? Or you may have already gotten, before we go there, we may have already gotten to the end and both of you just kind of walk away and go to the other room and are telling yourself how terrible the other person was. Well, there's a number of things that you can do. And if you think about the things we've already talked about, in video number 2, we talked about physical relaxation, the deep breathing stuff. It's the simplest, the easiest, you've got it with you all the time. Just walk away and take some deep breaths and slow down. And then as you're ready, don't talk to yourself about how stupid that person was, because that just keeps you all revved up. Just think about your breathing. Think about you don't like feeling bad. Think about something good. And the other piece you can add to the deep breathing is actually what we talked about in the last video, appreciation. If you can look out the window and enjoy the beautiful sunset, or you might be in your bedroom and there's a picture of your 5-year-old or your 12-year-old when they were 5 on the wall, and you just look at them and remember how much you loved them and how cute they were, and how they're such a good kid now. Now, you don't want to be thinking about the person you're upset with right this minute, but someone else who really has brought you joy and peace and that you're appreciating. So as you do that, your brain goes, oh, the danger's over. Oh, I'm not under attack. Oh, I can be okay. And then there's also, if you have time, there's a way to do it that we can actually take time and just pray to Jesus and just say, Lord, I am really upset now, and I don't really like what I just did. And tell him about what it was like for you. It's like you just tell him, you know, like if you had a good friend sitting there and you were going to say, you know, I got so upset and they said this and it hurt my feelings. And I didn't like it. And I didn't think they were listening to me and it just felt bad. You have that conversation with Jesus, and he's really good at listening. He's really good at knowing what we feel because he's been in all those bad situations, and he's always available. He's always available. You may not be able to find a friend to talk to in that moment, but Jesus is always available. So just remembering, one, what you're doing is normal. It happens to everybody. There's a physical purpose for it, survival purpose for it. So you're not defective, and there's a way to get yourself out of it. Those are really helpful. Now you've got your relational circuits back on. What are you going to do? First thing you need to do is remind yourself that rupture in a relationship is normal. You will never have a relationship with anyone that has any kind of meaning or any kind of time depth to it that you will not rupture it. But that's not a disaster. It's normal. So after you've had your time out, got your relational circuits back on, you really are appreciating who that person really is and they're important to you, then you can just go and use the magic words. I'm sorry. It really are the magic words. You don't have to even be sorry that you did that you were wrong in the argument. We're not talking about sorry about what happened, but sorry about how it came out. Like sometimes the other person may have actually been wrong in the situation. What they did was the wrong thing, but you can be sorry that you had the argument. You can be sorry that you lost your temper with them. You're part of it. And just listening to them, going back and let them say what it was that they were upset about without responding to it and getting mad again. So it's interesting how I'm sorry is almost the magic words. So the other thing about it is when you go back to them, that usually opens the door to help their relational circuits get back on. One of the things that, let me be a little clearer, if they're still upset, the first thing you're going to need to do is listen to them. I'm sorry we fought, I'd like to make it right, and they're going to probably start telling you what you did wrong. If you immediately start getting defensive about that, you're not going to go anywhere. If you listen to them, I'm sorry that upset you. What you did could have been not even wrong, but I'm sorry that upset you. I'm sorry we fought about that. I want to hear how that affected you. That attunement process helps get their relational circuits back on. Just like when Jesus listened to you, now you're going to listen to them. And when they start to calm down, then if there's both of you get your relational circuits back on, then you can actually talk about solving the problem, or you can say, well, that was a problem and we need to fix it, but let's not do it now. But everybody does rupture and everybody can learn how to do repair, particularly if you put it on the table and say, of course we're going to screw this up. And so are our kids. And so is my boss. And so will I when I'm the boss. So let's all learn to walk through it together. And in that moment, sometimes, go ahead.
I was gonna ask you a question just for clarification here. So there's no one that's born an expert at doing this. This is something that you learn how to do. Yes. And you've got to lean into it and learn how to actually do it. Because I have to admit, Wanda, when just tell a little bit of our backstory here. When I was did my internship in ministry, I went to Chicago. Wanda was a host home for me when I was there. That's how I first met her and got to know her and her family. And it was very odd for me as a 20-year-old, because I'm like looking at Wanda going, she has this figured out. Like she just had a really good fight with her husband. Like, and you were someone that gave me that language, and Sarah Beth and I learned how to fight well and like talk through what was going on, this process that you're describing. But you weren't born that way. This is something you've had to learn, and all of us can learn about this and nurture this type of awareness, correct?
That's correct. Not only was I not born that way, I still don't do it right all the time. I recover faster, and I have less judgments about Doug when he's doing it, but
correct.
I still don't do it right all the time. And having you in the house actually made it easier to do it well. Anytime there's another adult standing around, you're going to do it a little better. Like if you ever notice if there's another parent at your house, you parent better.
Yeah. Yeah.
The witnesses are all kind of bring up the best in us sometimes.
Yeah. Well, that's just good to know, because like knowing that this is something we can get better at, and that, because I do a lot of, when I get into an argument with Sarah Beth or anyone for that matter, it's not the argument itself that gets me. It's all of the negative swirl and downward spiral afterwards. Like, man, I just suck as a person. I should have never done that. I should have never said that. I should have, and it's that. So hearing that this is something that we learn is freeing for me today. So,
well, and some people don't seem like they've learned it. They didn't take a class or go to therapy, but they had parents who did it well. So they learned it because when they were screaming as the 10-year-old or the 16-year-old or the 18-year-old, the parent was doing what we're talking about. So they learned it from the model, or they learned it with other teachers or other people like that. So it's kind of just like you don't think about somebody teaching you English. You just know
correct.
it, and
Correct.
other families don't have a person in the family that knows how to do it. So you can't swim if you've never been in the pool.
Yeah. Good.
And I do think you mentioned something important, that sometimes after this breakdown, one of the biggest enemies is shame. Like, I don't want to go back and apologize because then they'll think I'm an idiot. Or I feel so bad that I'm not even worthy to have them forgive me. That's all shame stuff. And recovering from shame and to joy is also a skill we learn as well. And some people have been taught that better than others. And when you had shame used as something to discipline you, like, how could you have done that? You're such a bad boy. Then it's going to be harder to manage that. But that's also very learnable as well, to recover from shame to joy.
That's good news. That's good news.
Okay.
Is that all for this session?
Anything else I want to tell you? I just think to reassure you that, having been Dr. Wanda Morgan, PhD, therapist for 30 years, married for 45 years, it's probably been 2 days since we had our last relational circuits, mostly off argument. Something about, I don't remember what it was. I mean, it wasn't awful, but it didn't have to be that way. So take heart. We got over it fast.
Yeah.
So that's about it.
Okay. Yeah, because that's one of the things that was very comforting for me as we reconnected a couple weeks ago, was just knowing that the tension, the different things that were coming up were normal. Because we all can get into that trap, and it's a lie, it's a script, it doesn't come from God, of you're not normal, you're broken in a way that no one else is broken. So you probably shouldn't name these things out loud, because you'll be exposed. Right. And people will know how bad, but and that's part of our heart in this, is exposing it and going, this is normal, that this is part of life, and we can learn and grow from it. And so I'm excited about the next video, just because we're going to start making that transition from relational to the spiritual realm. And I know you've got some really good things for us in the next session. So make sure everybody tunes back in for session number 6, I believe. No, 5.
Five.
5. This is 4. 5 will be the next one. So
Mhm.
we will see you then. Thank you for
Okay.
joining us.